Hi, I'm Samantha Mackay. Welcome to the next episode of Creativity in the Enneagram. And today I'm talking with Holly. She's a social nine and an ISFJ. I'm so excited. I'm getting to speak to a sensor. I've spoken to a lot of intuitives so far. So thank you so much for being a part of this, Holly.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So I'm curious. Let's get started. What does creativity mean to you?
So, creativity to me just means it can mean a lot of things, I think, but just ideas coming from inside as a unique person and then just being expressed outwardly in some form or fashion. Kind of vague, but I, I think I have a pretty broad broad definition of it because and I think I'll get into this a lot later on when I talk more specifically what it mean like for me how I express my creativity, but it even can be something having to do with creatively creatively teaching something to somebody or explaining something to someone or problem solving.
I like that broad definition. And so maybe to, give me and us some context, what are some of the things you do personally or professionally where you see your creativity coming out or where there's a space for creativity to come out?
Yeah. I've noticed, I haven't really ever considered myself, or I should say up until more recent years, like, when I was younger, I didn't really consider myself a very creative person because I think my definition was much more narrow before, where it was like, oh, creativity equals making art, like a painting or a drawing or, um, a sculpture or something similar to that. And I don't do those things naturally. I in my prior, in my childhood, I really liked coloring and drawing and stuff, but it wasn't like I would find it hard to just draw something free form, like, oh, I wouldn't necessarily do that, but I would take, something that my mom drew and I would just mimic it. I would draw that.
Mm.
So I didn't consider myself a creative person because I didn't consider it wasn't coming from me. It wasn't, it wasn't unique to me. Um, and and then as my definition grew because I grew more, wise and understood a little bit more about how the world works, I saw my creativity just come like that. Oh, that's what, that's what creativity is for me because it doesn't have to be as like rigid as I was thinking of it before. And so I see it. I don't see it too much in my personal life, although I will journal, and it's just for myself, so it's not really sharing it with anybody else, but it's sharing it outwardly. I'm expressing myself on the paper, so I journal, and that is a form of creativity for me, like writing, um, and then like I like bullet journaling, and so I turn, I do use it for productivity and scheduling and my to dos and everything. And I will use stickers and like I'll just make it pretty so that it gives me like more motivation to actually use it as a tool. So I make it look nice for myself. Um, but I see it most of the time play out in my profession, my professional life, and my career, and my side hustle as well. So, in my career, my day job, I'm a 401k administrator, and so I help people, customers, and mostly I'm in operations, so I'm helping internal customers, and I do a lot of procedures and process work and um, like setting up systems for people to be more effective in their jobs. So I write a lot of procedures, job aids, things like that. So I do a lot of technical writing, but in that I find myself like thinking of creative ways to like explain concepts so that people will actually um, learn their job and try and continually improve and make it so that there's less like gray area in their jobs and less friction in their jobs and um, making sure people have what they need to be successful in their jobs. So that's what I do a lot of, and I find myself creative in that because to teach people um, all of this stuff, they like I have to be creative in the ways that I explain and how I write to them in like the audience
Mm.
that I'm aiming towards. Um, sometimes I need to use pictures and put this, make a screenshot and put the arrows in the right place and stuff. And so I'm playing around with those things pretty often and just continually tweaking how I do that so that I can, tailor to my audience and have them understand it better. And that's, I guess, where I see that playing out in my
Mm.
day to day job.
Mm.
And then my side hustle is actually an organizing business. And I coach people on how to declutter and organize and be more productive in their lives. So, and then I'm creating marketing materials for my job, this is the first time that I'm really like putting myself out there as an expert, and I'm trying to get clients. And so creating content that is going to attract people and then also when I'm actually working with clients, it's a matter of creatively breaking down their problem and then solving it. So that's the problem solving stuff that I'm actually really good at because that's what I do in my day job. So it kind of complements
Mm.
it all complements each other that way. So I
Mm.
see that as creativity now, whereas in the past, you know, it was because I had that rigid definition in the past of it has to be art. um, I didn't see it so much before.
Mm. And I think the being flexible and trying to think, how can I explain this problem in a way that someone else can hear it? That is absolutely a creative process because you have to use that
Mhm.
sort of flexible thinking and, how do I approach this? Or what do I do that'll help it get into someone else's brain? So I'm curious. So when you're problem solving and thinking about how to creatively communicate and get a message across to someone, how does that
Mhm.
feel in your body? Because I know you're a body type, you're a nine, but nines, can go to sleep to their own sensations and their own what's happening internally. So I don't know if you've given any thought to this, but I'm curious, like what's it like internally, like an inner experience for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I hadn't really given much thought to that. But I would say that if it feels, or when I'm solving problems, I consider that to be something that I find really, really fulfilling and makes me really happy when I can solve a problem. And I would say that sometimes when the problem is being described and when I don't have a good grasp on it yet and I don't quite understand, like that's when I would say my body is like a little tense, like a little
Mm.
worried that, I'm not going to be able to solve the problem, or the person is not going to understand me and we're not going to understand each other. So like this is not going to get resolved. So that doesn't feel good. So I'm, I might constrict, like my shoulders just get a little tense and you know, it doesn't feel it doesn't feel great. And in the past, in the past when I've been less aware of how my body, like I would just kind of ignore it and then it would just get worse and worse. But
Mm.
as I've realized, oh, that's a sign, and it's okay that I'm feeling this way now, but I've been able to look at it from a little higher level and say, oh, this is just because there's a problem that hasn't been solved yet, and it can be solved. Like there's always a way. There's always a
Mm,
way that we can work something out. So um um and I guess I try to go fast as possible to the resolution. And sometimes that is actually not very beneficial, but I think it's in service of trying to get rid of that tension as quickly as possible.
right. I like how that tension, once you were able to sort of see it from a new perspective, really serves you. It helps you identify, actually, there is a problem I haven't solved yet. And
Mhm.
to pick up on that. Because I think our bodies really can tell us so much about, the experience or what we're doing at the time. So how how did learning that you're a social nine change or reshape your understanding of creativity or your own creative expression?
Yeah, I think it's mainly about um, about conflict resolution. As a social nine, go find if I find conflict, I act really quickly to get rid of it, and I didn't really think of that as avoidant to the conflict. um,
Mm,
and yeah, and I don't know that because like I didn't think of it as I realized I was creative um because I realized I was a social nine. I think maybe as I've done my work, done inner growth work from learning about the Enneagram and myself as
mm,
a social nine, that I was like, oh, okay, I am a unique person that has unique gifts in this world to bring out to people, and what are those? And then I already had my organizing business, but I didn't do much with it before. But then I started really like putting myself out there on social media with my um, hey, you can use organization as self care, and and so I was creating these images, and I was creating like little digestible chunks that I could put out there to people to say, hey, like you don't have to suffer like I did. Like I can help
mm,
you because I may have a little bit of a savior complex, and as a social nine, that I can you don't have to go through what I did, which was basically fill my calendar so tight with so many things and so many people and so many events and
mm,
things that I may or may not want to do.
mm.
um, and like going through that and the pattern of that and having like complete just burnout periods of time when I couldn't do anything for anyone. Um, realizing that I've gone through that pattern, I it made me even more motivated to get stuff out of my brain and out of my like take action and do something in the world that would benefit other people, to not have to go through the same, problems that I did, that I was facing.
Mm.
And it actually has helped me um, to put that out there to the world, because then I get the mirroring and people saying, oh, this is great. This is exactly the thing that I needed to hear. Because then it just completely or continuously reinforces that, oh, I was made to create that content and put that out there, because I've lived it, and I
Mm.
can help maybe bring this unique perspective uh,
Mm.
out there to hopefully improve things for somebody else.
Yeah, because just to clarify for people, part of the work of a
Hmm.
social nine is to join less groups, basically,
Yeah.
to belong less and to acknowledge the sadness of not belonging and how that motivates them. And I love how by being able to put language to that sort of pattern of behavior, you're able to go. So self-care is doing less, joining less, acknowledging
Mhm.
that rest is okay. And yeah. And I love how that helped you put your, you know, wisdom out into the world in a way that both benefits others and benefits yourself. That's great. I love
Mhm.
that.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. And and I actually have I know that the pandemic was a disaster and it was so terrible, but for me, I did get a benefit from having the slowdown like forced upon me.
Mm.
I couldn't go out. I couldn't fill my calendar with social events, and I couldn't I couldn't go to choir anymore, and that was taking a significant amount of time. I loved singing and I loved choir and I loved taking lessons, but at a certain point it just gets too much. And not only that, like when you're involved so much as a social nine and belonging to a million groups at the same time, there's not enough capacity. There's not enough capacity to focus on myself at all. And there's
Mm.
not, I was spreading myself way too thin, and the pandemic forced me to stop, and it was very painful to realize that, because then it actually forced me to face myself and realize, oh, this is what I'm doing. I'm self-sabotaging. And there wasn't capacity for creativity, I think, at that point,
Mm.
before before I changed, everything changed.
Yeah, that's interesting. The slowing down gave you more space to be creative or to see the ways in which you are creative that was harder to see before you were able to sort of
Mhm.
slow down. So I'm curious, it sounds like slowing down supports you to be creative. Um, but now as you go about, with your work in various forms, what supports you to be creative now?
It's the same. It's pretty much the same thing, just slowing down and realizing that I, d- I guess it's boundaries too. It's saying no to things that will make it so that m- my capacity is lower. Like saying no to things that I don't want to do in earnest, because that is super hard for me,
Mm.
but the boundary, it needs to be set all the same, because there just won't be time to be creative if I'm over here doing other things for other people that are not necessary to do.
Yeah.
um yeah, it's slowing down, having the boundary, tuning in with myself, journaling, having therapy. um yeah, sometimes I just can't, or I need more support to remind myself to go inward and bring that creativity out, and
Mm.
prioritize it.
Yeah.
Prioritization is a big, it's pretty much everything.
Yeah. Boundaries, priorities, saying
Mhm,
no, going inward.
mhm,
I like that, how you phrased it. I need
mhm.
support to go inward so the creativity can come out because the creativity is in there. It's always in
Yeah.
there. It's just how do we create an environment that allows it to give it space and emerge and move out into things. Mm.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, like what is the creation, whether it's personal, professional, like whatever it is, that you are most proud of or excited by?
I would say that it's the concept that I base most of my teaching on, which is organization as self-care. And the
Mm.
reason I'm most proud of that is because it's it's been kind of in the background, but I forgot about it a lot, and it's been there for years. Like I've believed that I've believed that, but I didn't live it for myself. I was trying to teach other people how to do it without actually internalizing it and turning it in on myself. So I remember, I think it was back in the beginning. I started my business in 2017. Um, And oh, and actually, side note, um, HAP Organizing Solutions is my company name, but it's the initials HAP are my initials for my name, but it also means happy and productive. And it also means home and paper organizing. And it also means harmonious and peaceful as per my Enneagram type. So I created that name and I'm proud of that. But
Mhm.
so overall you could say, I guess my creation of my business is
Mm.
something I'm very proud of, but the concept of organization is self-care. Back in the beginning, it came to me, it was a light bulb moment. Oh yeah, duh, like organization is self-care. Like we can we can improve our lives, and take care of ourselves better if we have an orderly home. The space around us is, we can find things that we need. We can, we can do the things that we need to do, etc. So um, I remember just like it slipped off the tongue when I was teaching people, and they were like, "Oh yeah, that's great." And then I just kind of forgot about it. It wasn't something that I really realized I needed to internalize further for myself.
Mm.
It was a strategy. Like I was focusing on other people. How can I save this person? How can they, how can I help them? So I would help other people. I would help other people. I would just make myself completely exhausted. Every week I would get sick because I was doing something for somebody else, or I was trying to help my parents organize their stuff, and I was my grandma, and just every week, every weekend, every day of the week, just completely focused on other people and not myself.
Mm.
So it was something that, like, oh, I needed to actually, like, and meanwhile, all of my stuff is unorganized. My house is a disaster. I'm not actually doing the work on myself, and I'm not taking the steps to actually apply self care and what that would actually mean for me to have self care. I was using massages and other tactics, like trying all this thing, going to the chiropractor, doing everything that was like reactive to my symptoms and trying to
Hmm.
soothe my symptoms, but not actually trying to proactively have a life where I was taking care of myself.
You weren't
um
getting to the root cause of
yeah.
the problem.
There's
Yeah.
actually a lot more to this, and I think egoically, I found this out with a practice of, let me frame this let me frame this and create all of these Instagram posts and put them out there, um, in an attempt to help other people, but I'm going to include myself. I actually
Mm.
consciously said I'm going to include myself in my audience and say this is for them and it's also for me too. And I kind of tricked myself into putting this content out to help other people, as is natural for me to do. But I made a point to say, no, Holly, you're one of the readers and the listeners here, and you need to take these steps too. So, and in creating this stuff and putting it out there, I'm scheduling them sometimes in advance, a couple weeks. And then I treat myself as an audience member. So when it actually pops up on my Instagram feed, oh yeah, Holly said to do this, so I'm gonna I'm gonna do this as well. And
I
and
love
so
that.
it's like a circle of self help in.
Yeah, and it's such an important shift to include yourself in the audience. Like how that's been so powerful for you. Um, and yet I always find sometimes it's the simplest things that can be the hardest, gifts to give to ourselves. And we think, oh, of course we can include ourselves in the audience. But actually, for a social dominant, that could be quite a challenging switch to make. So my last question is about creative blocks. There are times when you get stuck, and how do you get through it? You might have answered this already because you've spoken a lot about self-care and rest and slowing down and saying no and setting boundaries. But is there anything else when you think about being creatively blocked?
I think that the creative blocks for me pretty much always just come from not remembering to set boundaries and take care of myself and rest, like actually take restorative rest, because there's a difference of numbing to rest, like I kind of have a tendency to do, which it means for like binging TV or eating food or, um, actually listening to too many podcasts and trying to learn too many concepts at once. Um, so that actually does block my creativity, because I'm listening to other people. I'm taking in input, lots of input and voices from outside into myself, so that actually blocks my creativity, because I'm not listening to myself and
Mm.
what's actually beneficial for me to do, or take care of, because I'm, avoiding something. I'm avoiding like sitting down and actually journaling, or I'm avoiding, um, you know, um, actually doing the task that matters, because I'm overwhelmed with too many things that I've said yes to and I've committed to. Um, I think it just all comes back to coming, or focusing on others, saying yes to too many things, not setting my boundaries, and not listening to my inner voice.
Mm. Found that point that you made about listening to too many other people and trying to take in too much stuff from others, and how that
Mm.
means you struggle to get in touch with your inner voice. Because I think sometimes I experienced that too, where you like, oh, I just want to teach other people's stuff, as opposed to connecting to, well, what do you think about that? What's your perspective? Do you have any wisdom to offer on this? Like sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. But unless you create space to tune in, it's hard to know that you can create a lot of internal clutter without realizing it. Um, so I really like that point.
Mhm.
That's good. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with creativity and your perspective as a social nine, and what that's been like for you. Are there any final things you want to add before we wrap up?
Have to be really careful about merging with other people as a nine, and going along with things that concepts that other people are saying, and so that drowns out my creativity. This is, I guess, a continuation of the last question,
Mm.
of drowning out my own voice because I've got other people's perspectives in the mix, so it's not actually using my creativity when I'm trying to maybe people please and go along with something that somebody else has said that's a little bit stronger or more aggressive of a voice.
Right. So really noticing whose voice you're following at any particular time and being attuned to that is key for you.